episode 157 of Coffee and Co-Read, your source for all things literary with Catherine
and Kristen, where we believe there's nothing better than a hot coffee and an awesome book. Join us for our virtual book club where we take one book a month and dive into all the drama, adventure, and romance we can find. Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Kristen.
So it was Kindness Week here in Newfoundland, where we are from.
Yeah, where is it?
Is it? I don't know if it's everywhere. It was here.
It's last week potentially.
Well, we're celebrating it this week. We celebrated, I should say, this week at school.
Yeah.
We did Pink Shirt Day, which I think is February 26th. I don't know if it's that same day every year, but that's the day it was this year. So we all had to wear our pink shirts.
Yes.
And I know at my school we did, we did kindness, like anytime we saw a student doing something kind, we, like, without telling them, put their name in, like, a Google form. And then at the end of the week, all the entries got drawn and somebody won, like, a little something something.
That's nice.
So it pays to be kind.
It does.
I'm assuming you guys don't do really anything at work.
No, definitely not. But it's just nice to, like, I think they do. I work from home on Wednesdays, so I didn't wear a pink shirt. And I don't think I own any pink shirts, but if I was in the office, I'd probably buy one, because they do like a pink shirt day, like, anti-bullying thing. And, like, people just do that in the world, wear it out. Apparently it's in Canada and New Zealand, which is interesting.
The Pink Shirt Day or like Kindness Week?
Yeah, Pink Shirt Day, which is kind of cute.
Yeah.
So yeah, I probably would have if I, like, left my house, but I just didn't, so I didn't find a pink shirt. But, you know, it's always good to think about anti-bullying and stuff, because, you know, happens to people of all ages, and it's shitty.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah. I remember being a kid, and I remember being bullied, like, so hard. And so my oldest child is actually at the age now where sort of a lot of my first bullying issues sort of came up.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like we've discussed it before on the podcast that my parents just enjoy the act of moving. So I was in 3 different primary elementary schools, and without ever having left, like moving maybe 15 to 20 minutes apart was the longest distance I did, right? I didn't ever move, like, I moved from one town to another, but again, like, it's so small here, our towns are 15, 20 minutes apart.
Yeah.
So
But it still zoned you for a different school.
Yeah, and, like, I remember the first time we moved from one house to another, and it was literally, like, we moved from one street, we moved down, the next block. Like, we moved to the next street over. And that zoned me for a new school.
Oh my god, that's
just
crazy.
That act of moving from one street to another zoned me for a new school. So that was, like, my first move. And then we moved towns and moved closer to my mom's job. So then that zoned me for another elementary school. So, like, I was always the new kid and I hated it.
Yeah.
And, of course, like, there was no cell phones and, like, you know, there wasn't a really effective way apart from calling kids on the phone. You know, like, you weren't as, I want to say, connected.
Yeah.
Right? So, of course, that was a struggle. So, being the new kid sucked. And, of course, there's always that group of mean girls.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Grade 5 is sort of when it all was sort of terrible for me. And now my child is in grade 5 and not experiencing the same things, but definitely, like, you know, experiencing some friction. And I find it really hard to, like, it's really hard to comfort, you know what I mean? Like, to give a solution when, like, you don't have one.
No. You know, well, that's the whole bullying thing. Like, there isn't really a solution to it. Like teaching people empathy is, like, the solution. And it's like, how do you do that? So, or, like, teaching people that other people also have feelings. It's just, like, there's so much, I don't know. It's just hard to stop bullying, especially with, like, the more connected people are now, too. So,
yeah.
What are the solutions? And people are going to, like, kids are going to argue. And it's, like, world ending when it happens, when you're in it. But then, like, 2 days later, you're friends again, and you're like, I don't understand what just happened.
Yeah.
So it's hard, too, because you're like, even if it's not bullying, if it's just friendships, like, how do you tell a child that it'll probably be okay in a few days when it's the end of the world right now?
Well, and that, too, like, they're also, kids are still growing, right? So how do you, like, and again, part of it is probably because I moved around a lot, but, like, I can very safely say that I don't talk to anybody that I went to elementary school with. I really barely talk to people I went to high school with. Like, we're still, like, friends on social media, and, like, it's not anything intentional. I just, like, especially with COVID happening.
Oh, yeah.
Like, COVID was sort of that immediate disconnect, right? You immediately had to disconnect from everybody.
Well, and it was so much effort to actually still talk to people, because it was like you had to physically put effort into keeping people close when they were so far away, when it was just a mentally hard time anyway. So it's like, how do you force yourself when you're in such a down, like, everyone was down during COVID, like,
anyway, so for me, it was just a very, like, it was just, and it's still easier, like, my life is so busy, like, you know, you just naturally, you just disconnect from some people.
Yeah.
So, like,
well, it's the effort that you have to put in, and it can't just be one-sided either. Like, if it's only one person trying to put the effort in, then you're not going to keep a friendship either. Yeah. So. But,
yeah, so it's just really hard to tell a 5-year-old, like, or tell like, somebody, like a child, that, like, it doesn't really matter. You're probably not going to talk to this person. You know what I mean? Like,
I do. I didn't get that this is where you were going. This is where I was going. But I do like it.
Or, like, how do you tell someone that, like, well, you know, naturally part of growing up is you're probably not, you know, sure, of course there are exceptions where people meet in primary school and they stay friends, and then they grow up together, and then they're adults and they're best friends. And, like, I get that. Like, that is totally exists.
Oh, for sure.
But I feel like it's probably more common to sort of, as you figure out who you are as people, there's sort of a natural, you know, you naturally just drift apart. Yeah. Which is also fine. Yeah. But, like, again, how do you tell a child then? Yeah. You know what I mean? As you grow, you're not going to really be friends with that person anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's not really something that you can explain. But it is true. Like, I'm not friends with... There's one person that I'm friendly with that I went through all the grades with. But, like, we had years of not talking and then kind of reconnected semi-ish recently in the last, like... few years. But, like, once you're, like, done high school and then you start other things like jobs and other schooling, if you go to do that, like, you meet people there that are in your life every day. Like, 95% of my friends that, like, I even still talk to are from Second Cup. Like, even my acquaintances now, they're still from Second Cup, which, like, you know.
So. Anyway, so
it's hard.
Being a kid is
Don't
hard.
Don't bully people.
Yeah, we should all just be kind.
Yes, being a kid is hard. Being an adult is hard. Everyone should try to be kind this week and every week. Yeah. Do something nice for someone.
Yes. That's our PSA for the day.
I was just going to say public service announcement of the day. So, yeah. Just a heads up, this isn't a spoiler-free zone, and things might get saucy.
So it is our last week with Brides. Woo! We made it.
We did.
We survived the gauntlet. This isn't Fourth Wing. What am I talking about? So, we are reading today chapters 25 to the end. So I don't even remember what happened last week. I will say that, like, I think Lowe and Misery sort of got jiggy with it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
They've become closer.
Unrelated.
But also, I guess the big thing, like, I legit have no recollection of what happened last week, except for the very end when, so I guess Misery and Lowe met up with Misery's brother Owen. He brought Gabby along, who is the collateral for the werewolves, and as far as we knew, Lowe's mate. But then I guess Misery watched them interacting and was
like, what the fuck?
Yeah, they were very, like, polite, but like a little bit formal, like, did not act at all like Lowe did not act at all like he was in love with her.
Yeah. Misery also got poisoned last
week. Poisoned.
She's fine though.
But she is okay.
But it's just, it comes back up this week.
She got poisoned with peanut butter.
Yes, sad. I just had some peanut butter. Very tasty.
So she's just, our sort of cliffhanger last week was she was like, they're not mates. Sort of her, like, big thing.
Yeah.
The realization.
Yeah. She's like, it means something. Yeah. I just need to think about it for a
which
few
is
days.
Stupid. Okay, so is there anything else that I missed? I know, like,
I don't think so. That was just the real big thing, I guess.
She was poisoned.
It just comes back up this week.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would have.
I think she did learn a little bit from Governor Davenport about some stuff, but
oh yeah, it was kind of like he killed
Thomas Jalakis, who's Anna's.
Oh wow, you remember the name? Good job.
Because he's Anna's, well, not because he's Anna's dad, but, like, he's Anna's dad, and Governor Davenport had him killed for, like, embezzling scheme.
Yeah,
like, he was worried about.
He was gonna let people know.
Something. So he killed him. Okay, so picking up exactly where we left off. So, Misery and Lowe are getting in the car to leave Owen and Gabby. And, like, they get in the car and she feels like she's close to figuring something out. But all she has right now is that Lowe and Gabby aren't mates. And I'm just like, ugh. And she just remembers that her apartment is nearby, so they're like, let's go check it out. So, like, the council took over payments for her because she's the collateral, so, like, she didn't default on her payments or anything. Also, she's only been gone for a month, so, like,
yeah.
I think it's a month. Like, it doesn't seem like it's been that long.
It doesn't. I don't know how long it would have been.
So, but maybe not even a month. So, like, they're like, oh, it took over payments for her as the collateral. And I'm like, have you missed a payment? Like, have you even had the opportunity to miss a payment yet? But
yeah,
it's fine. She also, like, obviously she didn't have her apartment keys because they didn't anticipate doing this. So she has to break in with a little, like, hairpin. And Lowe is like, you're amazing. You could be a thief. He doesn't say that. That's me. But
yeah.
In my brain, it's like, ooh, you're amazing. You could break in somewhere. Ooh. Anyway, it's just funny. So they look around the apartment, and he asks her, like, how long she lived there for, and she was like, for 4 years. And she thinks back to when she originally got the apartment. So, like, she thinks back to feeling, like, really excited to go out and pick out the furniture from thrift stores. Like, this was sort of the first apartment that she got with her paycheck from her real job.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, she just remembers being really excited with the decorating and feeling, and she really liked the simplicity and the clean lines and all of that.
Yeah.
But now she's come back and she's looking at it and she says it looks really sparse and lifeless.
Yeah, which I kind of don't like. I don't like that she's like, I really liked it and now I don't like it because I realized that, like, I guess she's like, I realized I was depressed, but like the way she talked about it, about being excited about picking stuff out and like having the apartment, it sounded like she did actually like it. It's like, it's okay for your likes to change. It just, I don't know, feels like she's, I don't know how to say it, but like she's like discounting all of those feelings because now she looks back and she's like embarrassed about it because he's there.
I sort of didn't take it that way. I sort of took it like the way she described it. I don't think it was the furniture and stuff that she because that's what she really talked about connecting with, is like being able to go out and pick out all these pieces and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when she talks about how like sparse and lifeless it is, in my brain, it's like there's no sense of it being lived in. There's no like pictures. There's no like it. To me, that's what it seems like. She's kept it very impersonal.
Oh, okay.
Now, whether that's right or wrong, I don't know. Maybe it is your interpretation of it instead. But, like, that was my interpretation of it. That it wasn't that she didn't like the design of the space anymore. It was that it doesn't feel lived in.
Yeah. I do think it's still, like, trying to portray the fact that... And, like, it's kind of what Serena was telling her, too, that she's depressed.
Yeah.
And she needs one thing to care about. So I think it really is trying to, like, show the reader, instead of just having to say it, that, like, yeah, she didn't care about anything. She was depressed. She lived in a house that was very sparse, kind of thing. Like, I think that's the point of it. But I was just like, but she's talking about how much fun it was to do all these things.
Yeah.
It just seemed like they didn't match up to me.
That's true.
But I get it.
Anyway, so, like, she even says, she's like, oh my god, could my tastes have changed this much since I left? Like,
yeah.
So she can tell that he is struggling, and I think he says it, like, give me a second to get used to it, to get used to her scent, because he says the apartment smells a lot like her, like, and it's in layers, because she obviously has lived there for years, and, like, she's like, I know that he doesn't hate it, but, like, she wonders if he used to hate it and has just gotten used to it. Anyway, so then she just, like, I guess changes and she just pries a little bit to ask about Gabby, just to get some information, and asks, like, why she was chosen to be the collateral. And he just tells her that she's a couple years older with him and grew up in another huddle, so, like, he was like, I don't really know her super well. And he was like, she was chosen because she volunteered. So apparently during meetings, Misery's dad made it clear that if he was giving up somebody for the marriage, then the werewolves needed to provide a collateral. And Lowe was like, well, then no, because I'm not doing that. But then Gabby pulled him aside and she said, like, let me do this. Let me be the collateral.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess we learned last week that Gabby was, I don't know if we said it, but Gabby essentially was just lazing around the house all day, working on her master's.
Yeah, I think she said it last week, like, that's all she does.
Yeah, so...
It's, like, fair.
She then asks Lowe, like, I guess last week, during, I guess Misery noticed during the conversation between Lowe and Gabby that Lowe had to ask her again what she is doing in university. Like, what are you majoring in again? Or, like, what are you studying again? Or something like that. And Lowe was like, and so I guess now Misery's like, hey, Lowe, what did I study in university? And, of course, he knew the answer right away.
Yeah.
And then she's like, so Gabby's not your mate. And, like, he's a little confused with that statement. Like, I guess as to why she even thought that. But then she reminds him that Governor Davenport told her that Gabby was his mate. And then he sort of has to explain to her that Anna is his only living relative, and a collateral is normally a living relative of the alpha, or the one of the, somebody high up.
Mm-hmm.
And said, obviously I can't send her in as the collateral. So they convinced the vampires that a mate is just as, important as a relative.
Which it would be.
Yes, absolutely would be. But again, vampires have no concept of mates. So, like, they just sort of have to go on the word of the werewolves. Yeah. And so they lied about Gabby being his mate so that they would accept her as the collateral. So essentially it was all a lie.
Yeah.
And so, like,
great.
But this is what I don't understand. Like, if the intention was to lie and say that, yeah, Gabby is his mate, I don't understand why he would then be confused that Misery thought that Gabby was his mate.
I think he was like, but we want to keep it on the down low so that nobody realizes that, like, they have such an important person or some bullshit. Like, I don't know.
I guess.
It's silly that he was surprised, though.
But, because it was like, it seemed like when she said it, he was, like, so confused as to why she would think that. And it's like, but you
put two and two together.
Yeah.
Clearly she heard.
Like, you told that narrative, regardless of who you expected to know about it. Surely the expectation would be Gabby being his mate. Oh, yeah, that was a lie. Like, instead of being like, what? And, like, confused as to why she would think that.
That's, makes sense.
Anyway, so for some reason, him vocalizing that Gabby is indeed not his mate, makes Misery want to make out with him. So she does. So, like, she just, like, jumps him. And she's, like, kissing him, like, with desperation.
Oh my god.
So she also wants to do more. And he, like, pushes her against the wall and, like, tells her that the house smells so much like her. He can't stop thinking about anything but her. So, like, she needs to tell him to stop if she wants to stop. But obviously she doesn't want to stop. So, like, they strip and she just says she wants to try having sex, but he doesn't think it'll work because of the knot issue. But she thinks it will. And we finally, like, we knew what it was beforehand, but Misery did not, and so he makes her say it. He's like, you don't even know what it is. And she's like, it'll work, and he's like, you don't even know what it is. And she's like, well, then tell me. And he's like, or something. He's like, say it. Say my knot. And it's, like, supposed to be, like, sexy talk, but for me, it didn't really work.
Yeah.
But, like, her saying the word not turns him on even more.
Yeah. Of course.
And then she just asks him to try, and, like, he's getting really turned on, and he can't hold himself back anymore. And so, like, he fingers her, makes her come super fast.
Of course.
And then he, like, I guess he's, like, caught up in the moment, and he's like, okay, we'll try. And so he just puts it in. And she thinks, so, like, she's a virgin.
Yeah.
But she's like, there's no pain or burn. Like, it doesn't hurt at all. It just feels great. Like, their bodies fit. And he calls her perfect out loud. I don't know if he's calling her perfect, but he's saying it's perfect or something.
Yeah, of course.
And he tells her not to move or he'll come immediately. And he's like, actually, I might come anyway because, like, just your scent all around me and, like, your neck right there. Like, he is about ready to blow. Eventually, though, they do start moving and thrusting, and, like, he has to take breaks to calm down. But she finally comes again, and he pulls out, and he comes on her back. So I forgot to mention that all of this was happening with her facing the wall and him behind her.
Yes.
So he comes, but he pulls out.
Yeah.
Before he comes, which, like, just seemed like, of course you, like, if that was all it took.
Yeah, why didn't you do this before? Like, this is easy. This is a great solution.
Yeah. Anyway, so she asks if Ware's always not, and he tries to avoid the question, and he's like, let me go clean you up. But then he's like, actually, maybe I shouldn't clean you up so that you smell like me all day and everyone knows who you belong to. Blech. And I'm just like, ew, sticky. No, thank you.
I was thinking over possessive, but also sticky.
Anyway, so she asks, like, do they always not? And he does try to avoid it, but she's like, I'd like you to answer the question. And he said it only happens between certain people.
Okay.
And then she just sort of has a little, I called it her little soliloquy, where she tells him that she thinks she's figured it out, and she knows he was intentionally throwing her off with Gabby, and she just assumed that it had to be another Ware, because she didn't realize it could be with someone from another species, but the more she got to know him, the more she understood that if Lowe were in love with someone else, he wouldn't behave the way he's been behaving with her. And
all fair points.
No, 100% fair. And then she tells him, like, she was like, I'm your mate. That she's like, I figured it out. And she was like, I feel the same way. But then she's like, well, maybe not the same way because I'm not aware. But, like, but essentially she's like, you know, I do have really strong feelings for you. I'm not scared or anything like that.
Yeah.
And obviously we get the oh so typical rejection, like we all expected it to happen. He lies and tells her that he shouldn't have told her about the concept of mates. But, like, and just says, like, you've gotten the wrong idea. And, like, he's like, you've been abandoned by everyone, so it would make sense that you get attached, but, like, obviously that this relationship was a mistake. Yeah. And then he tells her he's had some fun, but then he says, like, obviously what, like, he says, you shouldn't want to be tied to someone like me. Yeah. So, like, obviously that one sentence, like, clinches it all of, like, he's pushing her away on purpose, which I think is just so fucking cliche, and I hate it so much.
Yeah, me too. It's just not really necessary. Yeah. And it's cruel. He's being cruel. Yeah. He's like, you've been abandoned by everybody. Obviously, you'd cling to one person who isn't an asshole. Yeah. It's like, oh, okay.
It's, yeah, like, I don't understand why he's, like, okay, I understand why, in my brain, he's pushing her away, because he wants her to be free, he wants her to have choice, you know, it's dangerous being connected to him. Yeah. However, I just don't understand why he would want to break her heart in that way. Yeah. When, yeah, it's dangerous to be near her, but, like, also, I don't know, just, like, I don't know.
You'd think he'd care more about her feelings. Like, she is his mate. You'd think he wouldn't want to break her fucking heart.
Yes, and, like, yeah, it's a little bit dangerous, but, like, so far, her being the collateral is proven, like, for the vampires, is proven more dangerous when she was living in human territory. Like, they tried to kill her at least 4 times.
Yeah, that they've recorded. So, like, we already had that conversation.
Yeah, so it just seems like he is overreacting to, so far, one death attempt. Yeah. That they don't even know was for her. Yeah. Like, they're assuming it was unintentionally, so not even directed at her. So, like, I don't know, it just seems a little bit like he's overreacting to how much danger he thinks she'll be in.
Yeah, I agree.
So, After he's been, like, a huge asshole, he obviously makes her feel like shit, and she thinks that she made this whole thing up in her head, and she starts internalizing and, like, just being like, of course he's not your mate. Like, that's stupid. You're an idiot. Like,
you're different species.
Yeah, just really making her feel like trash. And his phone rings in the middle of their conversation, so he answers it. And when he's done, he tells her he has to go, and he's going to send someone to pick her up and bring her back into Ware territory. Mm-hmm. And she's about to suggest that, like, she can stay here, like, because he's already just suggested, like, it's probably best that we don't stay together from now on, like, so she's about to suggest probably, like, I don't know if that she was gonna stay here, but, like, you know, for him to not bother, essentially. Yeah. But he just says, like, no, it's dangerous. You need to be in Ware territory. And she just tells him, fine, and she turns to go shower and change. She's like, I'm just gonna shower and change. And then she goes to turn to go to her bedroom, and he grabs her arm and, like, turns her back towards him, and he kisses her on the forehead and, like, inhales her scent once before, like, letting her go. And I'm just like, why?
He doesn't love her.
Anyway, so she doesn't wait for him to leave. Like, he just lets her go, and then she turns and walks into her room and closes the door. Mm-hmm. So, our little snapshot from his brain is that he is being kinder to her than himself and hopes she never realizes it. I don't understand this at all. He thinks he's being kind to her by rejecting her and giving her freedom, which, like, I guess, but he hopes she doesn't realize that, and it's like, it's pretty obvious, dude.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, he hopes she doesn't realize that it's a lie, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so we cut to her being in her room in her apartment, and she's just, like, thinking about how she doesn't have a bed because she never used one. She always used the closet. But right now she wishes she had a bed so that she had something to, like, fall on. So instead she just sits on the floor against the wall, and, like, she thinks that it's her first heartbreak, and she just, like, feels so alone and feels this, like, unbearable pressure, and, like, she doesn't know how she can stand it, how anyone can stand it. She doesn't know how she can live like this. Like, and it's not just what he said to her, like, about, it's not just about him either. Like, she's just feeling like, she's like, well, maybe Serena didn't care for me the way I care for her. Nobody cares about me. Like, it's really causing her to spiral into something really, like, dark and depressing.
Which is also what he said. Because he was like, everyone abandoned you. You're shit.
But, like, this is what I don't get. Like, if he loves her and knows her, like, I just feel like, yeah.
He should know.
You're pushing that away.
To say that.
Yeah, but, like, there's some things you don't say.
Yeah, 100%. It was fucking stupid.
Yeah. Anyway, so she just decides she's gonna, like, pick herself up. She goes and showers, and Mick picks her up. And she can see that he seems, like, sad and upset. But she gets in the car with him and, like, asks him how he is. And he's like, oh, I've been better. So, like, we can tell there's something going on with him, too. But also, when I initially read it, I thought that he was just feeling sympathy for her. Like, because he could tell that she was off.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she leans her head just, like, against the car window. And she feels a bug prick her arm. And she, like, goes to wipe it away. And then she looks. It's not a bug at all. It's Mick with a syringe.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And then he tells her he's sorry. And then she passes out.
Yeah, it's not great.
Mm-mm. Then, another one of his little snippets. There are very few people he wouldn't kill to ensure her well-being. yourself included, because you were just an asshole.
100%.
So she wakes up to someone shaking her awake and calling her bleach. It's Serena.
She's alive!
She's alive! So she essentially tells Misery that Mick, like, dropped her lifeless body off in this attic place. And, yeah, Misery's just, like, in shock that she finally found Serena. She's like, oh my god, Serena, you're here. And she's like, oh my god, I've been looking for you. Or she says something like, do you know how long I've been looking for you? And Serena's like, probably 3 months, like, 2 weeks and 6 days or something like that. Like, it's how long she's been up in that friggin' attic.
Yeah, so I guess it means that her and Lowe have been together for 2 months. Because it was about a month after, I think. Or, like... Because when she looked it up on his computer, Alex was like, it's a date about a month ago or something like that.
Right. Okay. So they catch up, and Serena tells her, like, she has no idea why she's here, but the attic is super, like, well-insulated and fortified. But she said the only thing that she knows is that she thinks they're in, like, a 5-story building because of just, she said just, like, of the plumbing. Like, just listening to the pipes. And I'm like, you could figure out the floors based on listening to the pipes?
Yeah.
That's talent, but okay. But she also said that, like, she's tried to engage with them to try and, like, come up with an escape plan. Like, you know how you could, like, make them mad and then they come into the room and then you, like, hit them on the head and escape. Like, she's, like, tried to appeal to their sense of, like, you know, goodness, and, like, tried to get them on side. And she said she's tried every tactic, but they just don't engage with her at all.
Yeah.
Like, they don't talk to her. Like, no matter what she says, they literally drop her food off, and that's it. But she says other than that, they treat her okay. Like, they're not torturing her, they're not, like, being dicks. They just don't talk to her. So, like, other than the fact that they've shut her in this attic, it's been fine.
Everything's fine.
And she just says, like, she's been reading a lot because they left a ton of books up here.
You just, like, I'd go crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe? Hard to say.
I definitely would. Without the noise, I would lose it. I need noise. Like, even if I'm reading, I need to have music or TV or something.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, she wants to tell Misery, like, why she thinks she was kidnapped. And, like, they're sort of assuming because Mick is involved, or like, well, we're in Ware territory somewhere. And Misery's like, oh, I bet you Emery is behind this. So Serena's like, I'll tell you why I think I was kidnapped. And Misery's like, well, I already know some things. And she says, I know you looked into Thomas Jalaka, and I know you found out that Anna is part Ware, part human. And then Misery says, like, oh, Lowe didn't expect this, or said something regarding Lowe. And Serena's like, who's that? She's like, oh, that's my husband. And Serena's like, what? You got married?
Really, though.
But then Misery's like, well, it's your fault. Because she's like, I was looking for you, and, like, telling her, like, briefly about how she saw the little planner thing in Ellie Moorland and all that. And then she's like, I can't believe you wouldn't tell me about this, and I can't believe that you would try and exploit a child. And Misery's like, I bet you this is how Emery found out, because you were digging, and then you put yourself and Anna on Emery's radar. Like, it's all, like, essentially saying, like, you're a terrible, I can't believe you would exploit a child, essentially.
Yeah.
But Serena just sort of brushes past this. And Serena's just like, can I be honest and say I didn't think you were looking for me because of our fight? For that. And I'm like, really? You think a lifelong friend would just not look for you because you guys got into a fight?
It's literally what we were just talking about before, of, like, Yeah, you're gonna have fights, but then it'll be fine.
Yeah. So yeah, she was like, we both said some things we didn't mean, but they essentially said, let's talk about it later. Like, let's worry about getting ourselves out of this situation first.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Serena suggests then an escape plan that involves, she was like, I just thought of a plan. And they are very, like, spontaneous about it. They're like, let's go. So Serena's like, I have an idea. I'll get the guard to come to the door, and then Misery would use her thrall to get the guard to let them out. And Misery doesn't want to do that because she's not good at thrall, and she has to be touching the person in order to do it. So, like, she's like, I don't think this is a good idea. But Serena's like, you have to. And then, of course, conveniently, a guard comes to drop off blood for Misery, and Serena pretends that the drug that Misery was injected with is making her sick. And then it's stupid, because then the guy's like, what? And Misery goes to the door and is like, look at my eye is weird, there's something wrong with it, look at it. And tries to compel the guy and use her thrall on him. And the guard looks into her eye, and, like, for a minute it works, and, like, she can feel the thrall, but then she loses it. And the guard freaks out. And he's like, were you trying to thrall me?
Yes, I was.
And then he puts his arm through the door hole to grab her throat, because I guess he's pissed. Yeah. And that's when Serena works faster than humanly possible.
What?
To grab the dude's arm, and she, like, twists it, and I don't know if she breaks his arm. I think she does. Yeah. And then she just tells him that she's gonna start breaking his fingers until he agrees to let them out. And so she starts breaking fingers until he lets them out. And then they tussle with him for a second and manage to shove him in the attic and lock him in.
Good.
Yeah. So very quickly, they came up with an idea of a plan, and now they're trying to escape.
Concepts of a plan.
I just don't understand, like, why she couldn't do that. Like, they're delivering her stuff 3 times a day. Food. Obviously, they have to put their hand in a little bit to give her the food. Why could she not grab one of their arms and break it that way? Why did she have to wait for... Anyway, it's fine. So they head out, and then there's another door, like, at the end of the hall that they go out. And it wasn't locked, because I guess people don't think that it would be, or that it need to be. And immediately, Misery recognizes where they are.
Of course.
Yeah. And it turns out they are at the Nest, which is the building that Misery grew up in before becoming the Collateral. And I'm assuming it's where a lot of vampires live?
Yeah, they kind of talked about it. It's like all the rich vampires live there, but there's also, like, shops, and you can buy shit there, and it's like the government presides there. It's like everything.
So, and they're like, this is weird that there are guards in vampire territory. So they're like, we need to get out of here. But then they hear a voice behind them, and when they turn, it's Vanya, who tells Misery to come with her one last time. Quote.
Aye.
Yes. So, just from that alone, either Vanya is working behind her father's back, or her dad is in on it.
Yeah.
So then we get his little snippet again. He didn't think he could love her more, but she is a constant surprise. And I'm like, is that an insult? I can't tell. I know it's not meant to be, but I sort of almost take it as one.
Yeah, I get that.
Right?
Yeah.
So, obviously they are led into her dad's office, and Mick is just standing there next to her dad's desk. Turns out her dad is in on it.
What happened, Mick?
Yeah.
The fuck?
Yeah, well, that's what she says. What? Like, she can tell that her dad is waiting for her to say something, And she's like, I'm not giving him the satisfaction of talking to him first. So instead, she addresses Mick and just says, like, why? Like, what is your problem? Mm-hmm. And after a little bit of prodding, he tells her that her dad has his son. And essentially, she was like, so Emery's not in on this? And he's like, nope.
So his son that we were told was dead?
Were we? No.
Yeah, because his mate and son were killed on the border, and that's why he's so...
I thought it was just his mate.
Sad. I thought it was both.
Oh, okay. I believe you.
I'm gonna look it up now.
Anyway, they did take, so I guess you must be correct. We're just gonna say you're correct. Maybe he thought the son was dead, but realistically,
yeah,
they have him.
Well, and maybe it was her dad, maybe, who did it in the first place. Like, maybe her dad killed his mate and then was like, I'm going to keep this child just in case.
Yeah.
Don't know why, but...
So, Misery is, like, really pissed about this. Like, because she just says to Mick, she's like, you should have told Lowe. And, like, if you knew him at all, you would know that he would never let a pack member suffer. Like, you should have trusted him. He was your alpha. Like, if anything, she is sort of speaking as if she knows a little bit more than Mick does. But Mick has known him for years and years and years. Her dad just then, like, pipes in and just calls her a disappointment. But then she's like, yeah, you were too, even though the bar was already really low.
I love it. I love it.
And this whole scene is just them, like, trashing her dad.
Yeah, it's great.
And then he just says, like, this is why you wouldn't make a good leader. You're stubborn and self-centered. And then he sort of does what I call his villain monologue. Except he's trying to, like, I feel like he's trying to justify it to her or, like, treat it as if he's, like, teaching her something.
Yeah.
So he asks, like, why do the vampires hold power here? Because he's like, many vampires in other parts of the world have splintered and just live amongst humans, and they don't even have territories anymore. But, like, here where they are, they have kept hold of theirs. Why do they think that is? And Misery just answers with, like, sarcasm, because she's like, dude, you're a piece of shit. But Serena's, like, giving him the real answer. She's like, because you've created alliances. And essentially, Serena explains to the audience that obviously humans and wares have been sort of teetering between ignoring each other and being on the brink of war. And even though vampires are the weakest of the three species, no one ever makes a move towards them because through the collateral system, they've made alliances with the humans. And the wares know that if they were to make a move against the vampires, they would face all human military. So, like, essentially the wares are stuck. They can't attack any vampires because they're like, well, we don't want a huge fight to break out because then they would have to, it would be 2-on-1.
Yeah.
And obviously the humans are not going to make a move against the vampires because they have a collateral child on their hands. So the vampires have positioned themselves very strategically. And she also mentions, too, she's like, if we were to look into some of those, like, border skirmishes that almost put the humans and wares on the brink of war, probably they would see vampire involvement, indicating that, like, the vampires have been manipulating the humans and the werewolves into just constantly fighting.
Yeah.
And, like, also, she was like, you've probably also been bribing people, like Governor Davenport. And
who's a piece of shit anyway.
And Misery's dad, like, compliments her reasoning skills, and then she calls him a fuckwaffle. And I love it.
Yeah.
But then he actually, like, I don't know if we would call him a good dad. I know we would not call him a good dad.
Sorry.
But, like, he legit is just, like, what you would consider a vampire. Like, he's an emotionless... Like, he literally is... He just says, he was like, I don't like hurting you.
Yeah.
And he was like, I could have hurt your friend, but I didn't. And he was like, you know... And she was like, because she's my friend? Like, he was like, partly. So,
but...
Like...
But what he says after is, like...
I know!
Completely negates everything.
I know!
Like,
but, like...
It's just...
And I don't forgive him. And he is evil. But, like, I almost...
I think it's to control her that he didn't kill her friend, though. He's like, I wouldn't kill your friend. I don't think it's in, like, a because you care about her. I think it's in, like, a because he can use it to control misery.
Maybe. Like, he's not a good dude, but it just seems like he's just a very, like, emotionless, typical vampire. Like, he just doesn't have emotions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and Misery has sort of portrayed vampires into being that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just very, like, vacant.
Yeah.
Sort of reminds me of the Blood and Ash vampires. Like, not the good ones, the bad ones. You know what I mean? How they're, like, very, like... They don't really have emotions. This is sort of the vibe I get.
The Ascended?
Yeah.
Is that what they're called? Yeah. Yeah, I get that. And, like, it does make sense, because that's, like, the vampire vibe.
Yeah.
And, like, his big thing is the good of the many over the good of the few. So, like, I do get where he's coming from, but he's also a piece of shit.
Yes. Yeah. He also mentions that he said, like, yeah, of course I wouldn't hurt her, partly because of you, but also because of something else. And then he tells us what the something else is. And he says that Governor Davenport told him of a young child born of human and were. And then lets it slip that he's been thralling the guy for ages. And Misery automatically assumes that Mick told her dad about Anna, and that's who Governor Davenport was talking about.
Yeah.
But her dad says, no, Mick wasn't involved until only recently. And he was like, we realized that one of the wares that they had grabbed in a raid was related to a prominent ware, so they thralled him and used him. So essentially that's where Mick's kid has been. He's been in thrall and working for the vampires.
They thought that he was dead, which is fair.
Yeah. And then he tells her that the Governor Davenport actually told him about the half-human child 2 decades ago. So it's obviously not Anna.
Yeah.
So he was intrigued by the idea, and he found out that the child wasn't being raised by their biological parents. So had no idea, had no idea what they were, the child had no idea that they were part were.
Mm-hmm.
And they presented as human with human blood and all that. So he was like, I would like to monitor this. Because obviously she's like, not the only, but like the first known one of their kind in the area.
Yeah.
So he's like, where could I stash a child? He was like, wait, I have a child that's already stashed in the human territory, in safety. What if I put this random child with my child? And it could be a playmate for her. So, essentially they're talking Serena. And she grew up. And they sort of became complacent in monitoring her because she just didn't seem to be dangerous at all. And they didn't see any of her characteristics coming out. And they did notice that every while she would disappear for a few days.
Yeah.
But they were like, she's just a young adult and that's what they do. So, like, they just didn't. They were like, yeah.
Young adult human.
Yeah, they just attributed it to her, like, going on walkabout for a few days. But then she started snooping around, asking questions about her birth parents, and that sort of put her back on their radar.
Yeah.
And that's when they sort of discovered that, oh, hey, she's disappearing around the full moon. And then he tells them that Serena underwent genetic testing herself, and it came back inconclusive 3 times. And she went to the doctor, and her senses became too much for the doctor to measure. And apparently one night she cut herself to see if her blood was green. And she's like, how do you know those things about me?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I thralled you the first day that you were here and asked you, and you told me. And she's like, no, I didn't. I would remember. And he was like, nope, I made you forget.
Which, like, so convenient.
Yeah. So apparently she came across Thomas Jalakis, who had a relationship with Lowe's mom. And when she told him about the baby, he thought, when Lowe's mom told him about the baby, like that she was pregnant, he thought she was lying, so he dumped her and moved on. And he got a promotion and moved into a different department. Mm-hmm. But then he moved back to the Human Wear Bureau as a director, so he had all this clearance, and he looked up, I guess he was thinking about his old fling and looked her up and saw the picture of Anna, who looked very much like him.
Of course.
And he was shocked. He was like, oh my god, I do have a child with a werewolf. So he brought that information to Davenport, who recognized that this information was, like, sort of dangerous, and then he passed it on to Misery's dad, who then had Thomas killed and thralled Davenport to believe it was his idea.
Yeah.
So, I guess the whole reason for this whole thing, we've learned a lot of the what, but not a lot of the why. Mm-hmm. The dad is stressed that if word got out that there were human were hybrids, it could create unity and peace between humans and wares. And he doesn't want that. Because
Which, like...
Keep going.
You get why.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, for the vampires to live, like, they're hoping that they don't gang up on them.
Yeah.
The good of the many.
Yeah, essentially, that's what it is. It's as long as the humans and wares are fighting each other, they're not looking at the vampires. But if they were to unite over something common, like babies, or like make close relationships with each other by intermingling and having families, then, then it could put the vampires in a precarious situation.
Which is, like, A, how do we know the vampires also can't have babies with humans or with wares? But also, B, why don't they already know all this shit in Europe where they actually have the 3 species already commingling?
That's true. I don't know. Unless they just don't share information like that. But Lowe was there.
He lived there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. Confusing.
Yeah. So, Misery just tells her dad he's a terrible person. And that the council is not going to be okay with him doing what he's doing. And he's like, yeah, they would. They turn a blind eye to shit. And she's like, they're not going to be okay with you killing people. But then he just says, like, they like to pretend a lot of things. Like, pretend that they don't know that he's doing things. But, like, they do. They're, like, turning a blind eye on purpose. But then she accuses him of trying to kill Anna. She's like, I can't believe you would kill a child. They're not going to be okay with this. And he's like, oh, Misery, you think it was her I was trying to kill?
This is when he really enters his villain era of, like, oh, unredeemable. Like, before this, you're like, I kind of get where he's coming from. He's maybe not doing the best things. But at this point, you're like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Owen walks in with Lowe in handcuffs. What? And, like, she said that he's like a stone statue, but, like, obviously he's moving. But, like, his face, like, it's unreadable.
Yeah.
And then the dad says that he tells Lowe, like, oh, I tried to thrall you during the meeting, but I couldn't do it. And he essentially says, like, I thought I was trying to make it easier. I just want my hands on Anna. Like, not in a creepy way, in a...
Yeah, I know. It just sounds not great.
He wants to hide her away. Which still doesn't sound great, but... No. So, like, I guess... The dad is, like, essentially saying, look who I have. I want you to give up Anna. And Misery's like, Dad, you're wild. Like, no, Lowe is not going to give up Anna for anything. Yeah. Like, essentially, his dad was like, I was trying to get you to give up Anna, but now you've tucked her away and hidden her where no one knows where she is. I'm like, the most obvious place in the world, but okay.
Yeah.
It's
if you actually used your brain, you'd be able to find her immediately.
Yep. But anyway, so he was like, I just want you to give her up. Like, I haven't been able to find her. And Misery's like, it's not going to work. He's not going to give Anna up for anybody. And then her dad's like, did you know that I understand the concept of mates? And Misery's like, yeah, but, like, you're wrong. We're not mates. And she's just looking at Lowe and she's like, tell him. Like, tell them. Tell them.
And he can't fucking lie to these people like he lied to her.
Exactly. Like, he literally just finished breaking her fucking heart and being like, oh, you misunderstood me. And, like, why can't he do that now? But, like, he doesn't say anything.
Reasons.
Ugh. He doesn't say anything. He just looks into her eyes with longing and sadness. And so the dad wants Anna, and he tells Lowe that his mate will request that he hand her over. And then he moves so fast, he grabs one of Vanya's knives and holds it to Misery's neck. So essentially, he wants Misery to be like, to ask Lowe to give up Anna. And he thinks that Lowe will not be able to deny his mate anything.
And that Misery cares more about her life than Anna's because she doesn't care about children.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So she tries to reassure Lowe that he won't kill her. It's like, don't worry, this is all for show. He won't kill me. And then...
This part is just kind of sad.
Well, and then the dad's like, well, I did try to poison you. He was like, I'd do anything for the good of all the vampires. So, turns out, like, Mick did put the poison in her peanut butter on purpose. It was meant for her.
Mm-hmm. And it's devastating because it's her dad trying to kill her.
So then he puts the knife against her a bit harder, and, like, there's blood beading out of her neck, and he's just threatening to kill her. And she just tells him, she's like, I'm not going to ask Lowe to put her before Anna. I'm not going to do it. And the dad just asks Lowe, he says, oh, should I murder her? Since, I've heard losing a mate can be excruciating. And Misery's just thinking in her head, like, don't be in pain over her, like, death. Just go and live with Anna and draw and, like, have a good life.
Yeah. And she's, like, staring at him, hoping that he'll understand what she's thinking. You're like, that's not how the world works.
And Serena interrupts her thoughts, and she's just standing there, I guess. And she says something in their made-up language, and she tells Misery that the dad was wrong about whether or not she could shift. So apparently earlier when he was talking about how, like, she seemed normal, she didn't seem to be an issue, like, he said that, like, it looked to be like she couldn't shift.
Yeah.
They didn't notice her shifting.
And I guess she probably, if she could shift, she would have told him when they thralled her.
Yeah. So she just says, oh, your dad was wrong about whether or not I could shift. And then she sees her hand start to shift. And she needs to stall for some reason, so she asks her dad, like, can I have some last words to Lowe? And she just tells him that he is the best thing that ever happened to her, minus the fact that he just broke her heart like an hour ago. Yeah. And she would never want him to put her before Anna, and even if he did, she would love him a little bit less, because that's not who he is. And then she conveys to him that Serena can shift, like, through secrets and, like, half-spoken things. So essentially she's like, that thing that Anna's afraid that she can never do, like, tell her not to worry, that she will be able to do it, essentially.
Yeah, she's like, around when she's 25, or however old Serena is.
And Lowe gets it and whispers, now. And then Owen comes forward.
Because he was holding the cuffs, I guess. He was holding Lowe in place.
And so, like, yeah, so he was sort of going along with his dad being a dick. Mm-hmm. But he unlocks the handcuffs really quickly, and then Lowe shifts into a wolf. And then so does Serena. And it was really surprising for everyone that no one really registered it happening. And then Misery just watches as they essentially eat everyone.
Yeah. It's a very, like, it's not very gory, really, because they just kind of skip over it, which I'm kind of okay with. It's like, this is a romance book. I don't need
But it's also slightly anticlimactic, I find.
Yeah. To, like, build him up as her dad up as like this huge villain, and then you're also like, did they kill her father? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
So yeah, we go to the next chapter, and the blurb at the top is, she distracts him. His feelings for her distract him. I'm like, does this mean he's gonna get hurt or something? Like, that's kind of what I assumed, but it's not. So we kind of jump to after the fight, and Misery is kind of having a conversation, and I kind of like the way that she writes, in that, like, the author writes that, like, it's kind of funny now, after they just killed a whole bunch of people, we just move over and we're just having, like, a funny conversation. Yeah. And I kind of like it. But Misery is talking about, like, she didn't realize that Wolf's clothes stayed on when they shift. And apparently when Serena shifted, her shirt was around her neck for most of the fight, and she, like, as she bit Venia's throat out, like, she just had a shirt hanging out. Misery's just like, I just didn't think about it before. I didn't know where the clothes went. I just didn't think about it. Yeah. And I don't think she's really seen anyone shift, so it's not surprising. No. Gabby is currently treating her wound, I guess, on her neck, and Alex is making fun of her for believing that their clothes just disappeared or something. Ludwig and Cal and a bunch of other seconds show up, and they're interrogating Mick. And then Owen comes over and asks Misery to come with him. And they kind of check in with each other, which is kind of nice. And Misery just says she wants to see Serena, but she's currently with Juno trying to control her shifting. So she actually just went for a run with Juno. And Owen then says to her that, like, he saw her face and she really thought that he fucked her over. And she says, well, you did bring my husband in handcuffs. Yeah. And he's just like, yeah, but it was Lowe's idea. And you're like, of course it was. But he says they got the footage from the break-in to Serena's house, and they saw that it was Mick. So he immediately called Lowe, and Lowe freaked the fuck out because obviously he sent Mick to get Misery. So it was like, fucking poor timing. A bad jumble of events. Then the Wares that were watching the governor saw that he called their father after they were there. So they knew that her father was up to something. And Owen says that Lowe contacted him to see if he'd help. And that's when, like, Owen captured, in quotation marks, him.
Yes.
And then he asks if she's ready. And she says yes. And we don't know what they're talking about, but they go into a room and their father is inside, and he's got, like, a blindfold,
yes.
A blindfold and headphones on so that he can't hear or see to thrall anybody. And Lowe's in there, I guess, guarding him, and Lowe asks if she's okay, and she lies to him and says yes, and then he basically just says yes too when she asks him, but they both know they're lying, and it's like, okay,
yeah,
fine.
They both are sad.
Yeah. So Owen talks to their father, and he immediately just starts to monologue again about how he'd just do it all again, and he's in the right, and, like, all this shit. And then after their father's done, Owen just smiles at him and says he's going to take over his spot on the council, and he's going to broker alliances with the Wares and the humans that don't just benefit vampires, and he's going to undo all of the shitty things that his father's done. And once there's peace, he's going to spread his father's ashes over the border so that humans and vampires and wares will step over him, like, daily without realizing it. Which is kind of fun. But then he calls him daddy, and I was like, nope. I don't like that. But the rest was really good. And then, ugh. Anyway. And then Owen asks Misery if she has anything, like, last words to say to their father. And she's just like, nah. And she thinks to herself, like, that's the thing that would piss him off the most. So they blindfold and, like, headphone him again, and he looks super defeated. And Misery's like, yeah. Piece of shit.
Yeah. But, like, I don't know, man. It just seems like they're like, all those terrible things that you did. And I'm just like what? Like, apart from, I don't know, just, like, I just wish they had made a bigger deal about, like, all these terrible things he had done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because what do we have? Like, the fact that he, like, encouraged the collateral system, but, like, that was that's been around for 100 years. Like, is it the fact that he, like, manipulated people by thralling them and bribing them? Like, yeah, that sucks a little bit, but, like,
you wouldn't be put to death for
it.
And,
like, you know, manipulating skirmishes on the border, like, I guess. I don't know, it just, like, it seems like they have a lot of ire and a lot of, they're very vindictive over all the terrible thing he's done.
Yeah.
And, like,
I feel like it's more on the personal level for Owen. I think he's like, all the shit you've done to Misery, and you kidnapped her friend for months. Like, but I'm like, what are you changing on the council that's gonna, like, I guess they're gonna stop the things that you just said, but yeah, it doesn't seem like it's that much.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like if they can figure out good deals between, like, the wares, humans, and vampires, that's beneficial to the vampires too. So, like, you'd think that their father would be okay with it if someone was able to, like, come up with something that worked for all three species.
Yeah.
Like, that's the good of the majority of vampires, so, like, he'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah. Lowe then asks Misery what they should do. And she's just like, well, what happens if he lives? And then she's like, wait, but what would happen if he died? And they get that the council would have to decide if they want retribution. And Misery's like, well, Owen would have some say then. And Lowe's like, yeah, or you could be on the council too. Like, it's not just Owen that's the child of. And Owen actually agrees with that, and she asks Owen if he would give it to her, and he says he wouldn't be happy about it, but he would do it, and that the vampires may not like it, but they'd eventually get over it. He's like, you sacrificed so much for them. Like,
yeah, this whole thing, I don't like how they're like, ugh, you were the collateral, like, ugh. I don't get it at all.
I think it's just because they, like, hate humans, and they're like, you've been tainted by humans, but it's still like, but she did it so that humans wouldn't kill all of you, so you wouldn't be at war. Like, it's silly.
It would make more sense to me if the collaterals were revered, not like hated. Yeah,
but it wouldn't work for
but,
the
like,
story.
in my head, it seems like they should be revered. However, her dad thinks she's a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, in my brain, that would make more sense.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I'm not the author, so, like... But I don't know. This whole... I just don't understand that aspect.
But I can see it in that, like, living from age 8 to 18 with humans is going to have an effect on you, and you're going to be other when you come back. Even if they did revere you, even if they didn't hate you, like, it's going to change who you fundamentally are.
I guess, but, like, I don't know. I just don't see how they could be like, oh, you sacrificed yourself and it wasn't your choice. You stink.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's stupid. I don't see how that's correct.
I know, but I think it's more so the, like, they dislike humans so much that overtakes everything. It doesn't make any sense, but I do kind of get some logic of it being like, humans are gross and you were with them.
I guess.
It's silly, but... So Misery just asks Owen then if he meant it about a were-human and vampire alliance, and he just says, of course, and he says he and Lowe are already the best of friends, and Lowe is just like, sure. And then she asks, like, a shit ton of questions. She's like, where's Mick's son? And they're like, we're searching for him, we don't know. She asks what's going to happen to Mick, and Lowe says he'll let her know when he decides. She asks about Anna. She's safe, but she'll come home soon. And then she thinks, like, she doesn't ask it out loud, but she thinks, is she really his mate? Because he didn't contradict it. And then she thinks, does that actually matter? And is it okay if she wants to be? And she doesn't want to ask in front of Owen, so she just kind of, like, drops it.
Makes sense.
And then Lowe asks her again what she wants to do with her father, because she didn't really answer. And she says she doesn't care, but she's going to leave it up to the two of them. And she says that, like, they never have to tell her what they decide. Unless it becomes, like, for some reason they have to tell her.
Yikes.
So, which I feel like that's a choice. Like, I would want to know if he's alive or dead. But
okay. I guess, like, was he, like, he wasn't ever really a father to her, was he? Like...
No, but, like, I'd still want to know.
Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah. So she goes to her childhood room then, and she sleeps on a vampire-style bed. And I feel like this is why she sleeps in a closet in the human world, because she can't get one of these beds or something. But it kind of, like, explains it more a bit of why the closet is her jam. So it's like a thin mattress on the floor, and there's a wooden platform that's like 3 feet above the bed that's like good for blocking out light. So I'm like, I guess that's the reason she sleeps in the closet. You finally figured it out. I did think it was going to be trauma related, but doesn't seem like it. So she wonders, like, what's next for her marriage. She's like, that likely doesn't need to continue, and she could go back to the human world, but then she's like, I'd probably have to, like, refresh my resume, which is just funny. And then she wakes up to Serena lying next to her, and Serena tells her she knows that she's mad, and Misery's just like, but I'm not mad. And she's like, well, I know you are. And she's like, I'm not. I just want to know why you didn't tell me. And Serena says she kept a lot of secrets, so she's not sure which one she means. And I'm like, obviously
the
you
big
know which one she means.
The one, you're half werewolf. That one.
Yeah, exactly. And that's basically what Misery's like, the one that you're another fucking species. And Misery's just like, I thought you trusted me. And she says she does trust her, but at first she wasn't sure. Her body was just acting weird, so she didn't know, and her blood was red, so, like, there was no reason she thought she was. And when Misery's father first took her, she couldn't shift. And she suspected, but she also knew that Misery hated Ware, so she didn't want to say anything. And Misery's like, I had never met a Ware. Like, I didn't hate them. And she's like, well, you joked about them all the time. And I'm like, it's not a good enough reason to not tell your friend. But okay.
I guess it is for them.
Yeah. So Serena then says, like, she was worried she would die, and, like, I guess after her father took her, and that Misery then wouldn't make it because of their codependence, which is fair, because literally in their fight, Misery was like, the only thing I care about outside of, well, not even outside of herself, she didn't care about herself. The only thing she cared about was Serena, so it's kind of fair to be like, I was afraid you wouldn't make it if I died. But also, earlier she was like, I was afraid you wouldn't come look for me. And I'm like, these things don't make sense together. But yeah, okay.
It's very contradictory.
Exactly. But whatever. Then Serena kind of explains that, like, where she was staying, the cameras had blind spots. And she had so much time these last months, so she started studying herself. And she practiced shifting. And she says, like, it's like a muscle, but it's also in your brain. So, like, sure.
Yeah.
But it does make me feel like Anna's going to be able to shift earlier.
Yeah.
Because, like...
If it's in your brain.
Serena should be able to help her because she figured it out, which is fun, and I'm assuming going to be part of the next book. So then Serena asks if they can go back to being friends, and Misery's just like, we never stopped. And she doesn't have an issue with her being aware because she might be in love with one anyway.
Aww.
So,
fucking
Lowe.
Even though he was a dick.
I know. What a dick. So we get Lowe, the little blurb thing, and it says it could have been anyone, any vampire, and it was her. A roll of the dice, the luck of the draw. Which is, like, true. What are the chances?
Yeah, that his wife would be his mate.
Yeah. You would think 0. So Misery doesn't talk to Lowe for 3 days, and he's too busy alphaing and dealing with issues and, like, talking to Owen and Garcia, and, like, they're already trying to figure out this human werewolf vampire situation. So she spends most of her time with Serena. Juno comes in to tell Serena that they have good genetic testing, so they should be able to figure out, like, which huddle her parent came from. Because Serena's never met either of her parents, so she doesn't know if it's her mother or her father that was where. But if she wants to know, she can figure out, like, where they came from, probably who they are, I assume. But Misery notices that, like, Serena looks super unsure, which she's like, isn't like her. And Misery's just like, well, you can take your time to think about it.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes her think about, like, how different Serena is. And it's, like, not surprising.
She was literally
think that she'd be
held captive for 3 months.
Yeah, you'd think she'd be even more different, really. But, like, Serena cries more and is distracted, and she thinks, like, obviously she's transitioning. And Serena asks if she can spend some time with the Wares just to see, like, what they're like kind of thing. Which is good for Misery. So Misery goes to see Owen in their father's office, and the place is still stained with blood. Okay, it's just going to stay like that,
they're vampires. Like, why not?
They probably don't care.
Like it.
Yeah. So she asks her brother where Lowe is, and he's just like, he's probably home. And she's like, when's he coming back then? And he's like, I don't know, the negotiations are over for now. And it's like, what? What's happening?
Yeah, so she's just been, like, left in vampire territory. Yeah. It's like, okay, go fuck yourself then.
Yeah, and, like, it's not like she can text Lowe or anything. Like, she doesn't have a cell phone because they took hers. And, like, I don't know. I'm like, why is Lowe such an asshole in this part of the book? Misery thinks that, like, Owen looks stressed and power is hitting him hard and he just looks tired. And Misery's like, oh, I thought I'd go back with Lowe. And Owen just says, the council's formally going to vote on it next week, but he and Lowe agreed that she and Gabby no longer need to act as collateral. So Misery's just like, the council will never approve that, but he's like, yes, they will. They're basically going to do whatever I say because their father did so many illegal things and they're trying to cover their asses now. So they're going to do what he says. And I'm like, this is how they got into trouble in the first place, by just agreeing to one person. So they're going to do the same thing again. Just seems stupid. So Owen tells her that Gabby's back in Ware territory, and Misery's basically free to live where she wants. So, he asks if she wants to live with Lowe, and she's like, well, has he said anything? Like, if he wants her to, or, like...
Yeah. It just very much reminds me of, like, that childhood, like, did he say something? Like...
Yeah, 100%. And then Owen's like, I'm not your agony aunt here. Like, and he goes to kick her out, and she's like, fine. So she actually steals his car keys, and her and Serena go to the bridge. That hasn't been used in years, apparently, but they could just drive over it. It's all fine. The upkeep for the bridge is pristine. Anyway, So they go to this bridge where she declares who she is, and they use a face scanner and just let her through. And I'm assuming Serena's allowed through as well, because, like, they didn't care. Sure. So she drops Serena off at Juno's house, and they go for a run in the woods together. And then Misery goes to Lowe's house, and the door's unlocked, and she goes up to her room, and all of her shit is just packed up. And she's like, fuck me.
She's being kicked to the curb.
Right? I'm like, this is really shitty. Like, of course. So she's like, I guess I served my purpose, and now I'm gone.
And I guess, like, Lowe hates my guts. Thinks I'm a piece of shit.
Basically. So Lowe shows up behind her, and they awkwardly, like, say hey to each other, and then she says she hopes that she isn't trespassing, and he's like, what do you mean? You live here.
She's like, does she?
Yeah, we're all like, what the fuck? And then she asks Lowe, she kind of like bypasses it. She's like, whatever. But she asks Lowe if Serena can meet Anna, as they're the only like half-wares that they know of. And Lowe says he needs to tell Anna that she's a half-ware first. And you're like, oh yeah, you were keeping that from her too. Mm-hmm. But after that, he's like, yeah, sure. And Serena is always welcome among them because she's part of the pack too, and he has tasked Juno with checking up on her while he was gone. But he's back, so he's going to actually talk to Serena himself soon. And Misery's just like, oh, where have you been? And he's just like, he says he's been dealing with Emery. So she wasn't the one who tried to kidnap Anna. Obviously, it was Mick. But she is the leader of the Loyals, and they, like, essentially bombed a school. So, like, she's still a bad person.
She's still not great.
Yeah. Like, it seemed like it wasn't that bad. They're just like, there was an explosion at a school that we linked back to her. And I'm like, was anyone injured? Like, what the fuck? But we don't get any of that. They also found Mick's son, and he is currently with Mick under heavy guard. But Lowe isn't sure what he's going to do with them. But it just makes me wonder, like, were they both thralled? Like, did they do any of it under their own? Because it seems like for sure his son was thralled, and then that's how they got to Mick.
Yeah, I don't think Mick was thralled. Like, I think he did it all of his own volition.
Yeah, but his son was. So I'm like, you're locking up his son with him because he was captured and fucked over? Like, that doesn't seem right either.
No, that's true.
But anyway, so we don't know what they're going to do. He still hasn't decided. And she just says that she's sorry. She knows how much he trusted Mick. Because, like, in the beginning, he's like, Mick was like a father to me. So, like, that's
I've known him since I was a child.
Yeah. And he says, like, any other where, he would have been able to, like, he would have known that something was going on. But Mick smelled so sour and bitter all the time, he just assumed that that was his grief, where obviously there were parts of it that were his betrayal. She kind of, like, struggles with what she wants to say because she feels bad for him. But he's just like, it's not like her to not be able to, like, speak to him honestly. And she just gets irritated and says it was easier to be honest with him when she thought he was being honest with her.
True story, bro.
Which I think is super... I love it. I think it's super fair. And she also says, like, she doesn't necessarily want to be honest with him anyway, because if she does, he'll use her deepest wounds and what he knows about her past to hurt her when he decides to push her away again. And I love it. I'm like, yes, that's exactly right.
It's 100% what he did.
Yeah. And she says that he lied and he doesn't deny it again. So she asks why. And she just says she can force him to tell her because she could thrall him. And he says that she already has. And she asks if he's his mate. And he says she shouldn't use swear words that she can't understand.
I hate that he does that. That's the second time he's done that. And I'm just like, you use them all the time. Like, just...
Yeah.
Ugh.
So, yeah, it's not his best move. And she literally goes to, like, grab... Like, no, she goes to leave. She's, I guess, they're gonna mail her stuff to her. But he grabs her wrist and then, like, wraps his arms around her waist and pulls her to him and says that his feelings and wishes and desires are his to deal with, not hers. Which is just the stupidest shit ever. But, of course, he continues. And he says he doesn't want her to make the decision based on his needs. And when he met her, he was pissed that his mate was someone he could never really love. And he wanted her, but he felt trapped by her, which is why he was running away in the beginning. And then, obviously, he spent time with her, and she made him happy and better. And one day, he realized that he'd like her, even if she didn't smell like his. So he fell in love with her, basically, is what he's saying. But he says he can survive without her. And he says it wouldn't be good, but he would rather that than to watch her become unhappy by being bound to him.
Ugh.
Which is just, like, so annoying.
It is annoying.
And I do appreciate that she's, like, she just basically cuts him off and asks if her love can bind her to him. And asks if she has his permission to reciprocate feelings.
Ugh.
And because, like, I think it's in more of a jokey way. Not in a jokey way, but, like, in a you're being stupid way. 100%. And he's just kind of, like, surprised that she's saying that he loves her. And she's like, you don't get to act surprised about how she feels because she's been honest with him and told him all along that she had feelings for him, basically.
Yeah. He's being a pooper.
He is. And she says if she wants to be in love with her stupid were husband, then she will, which I love. And then she says that he can unpack her boxes because she's going to live here because she likes Anna and her best friend is part were, and people here have actually been nice to her for once, so she wants to stay.
Which I think is valid. Like, it's not, she's not basing her decision solely on him. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which I think
I appreciate.
Well, and, like, I think he should appreciate it too. And stop being a dick.
Agreed. But he says that he actually only packed her stuff up because he's changing the windows to windows like they have at the nest. So it's like he didn't want her stuff to get damaged while they were taking the windows out. And it's like, fine. Of course there's a reason. And it's a sweet reason. He does say, though, like, he's afraid if she doesn't leave now, he'll never let her, and each second is harder, and he wants her more and more. And she just kisses him and tells him to shut up. And I love it. I love it. And she says she's not one to change her mind. And then she says she understands him feeling pinned by the mate thing and knowing that she'll be his problem forever. And he says she isn't a problem, she's a privilege.
Like, I like it, but I also don't like it.
Oh, of course. It's also, it's the kind of shit that, like, when you read it in your head is fine, but when you say it out loud, you're like, ugh.
But
if someone actually said that to me, ugh.
But also, though, like, if she would be a privilege to deal with, then why the fuck were you pushing her away?
Yeah. 100%. So she just says that they'll try, and she says that's all any relationship is, and she says, like, wanting to be with one person more than anyone else and trying to make it work. And she says she may not have the hardware, but she's meant for him, and she's going to choose him over and over again. Which I think is, like, I think that's really sweet. And, like, sure, she can't say she's his mate, but she's deciding to choose him. I like that.
I guess.
He then kisses her, and it's super intense, and she can tell he's so happy to have his mate, and her saying, like, and her staying here. And she says, I love this, and I love you, and, like, pulls her shirt off.
Whoa.
And he, like, goes at her.
Whoa.
And we're like, this was aggressively fast. But then he pulls back and says that they have to stop because he's really wound up. Like, okay.
Why is that a problem?
Exactly. But she's just like, listen, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to drink from you. We're going to have sex, and you're going to knot inside of me. I'm like, what?
It's like, well then, okay.
And obviously he's afraid that he's going to hurt her.
Yeah.
Of course. But she just says, like, it hurts when she bites him, but that feels good, so maybe it'll be the same in the other case. And basically she also says, like, their end game, she doesn't say that word, but they are, so they kind of need to figure this out. Like,
yeah, they're gonna be together.
Makes sense. They're gonna be having sex. And she says that it sounds hot to her anyway, and that, like, snaps him out of it, and, like, she's immediately under him, and their clothes is flying off, and there's no hesitation, and, like, he literally just, like, slides against her clit, and she's immediately like, oh, I'm gonna come. And I'm like, okay.
It's like, we're doing this.
Yep. And then they're having sex, of course, and he says he wants to live inside of her, which gave me the
ick. I don't, I'm not here for it.
No. But he, like, stops her. He's very demanding in this moment, and I guess, like, that's kind of how their relationship's gonna be, but he's like, eyes on me, and she's like, okay. And then, like, we finally get the moment of, I guess, he starts to swell inside of her until the knot is too big to slide back out, and she thinks, like, it feels strange and full and nice. And then Lowe says he's going to come where he's supposed to.
Yikes.
And he says this is worse, so get ready. He says he's gonna pop a knot in her tight little ... And then he comes. And he says, my beautiful mate taking it so well. So they're tethered together. And, like, she hasn't come yet. But it feels so good just on the edge of pain. And she needs something, but she can't move around the knot because it's, like, stuck. But he brushes her clit and she immediately just comes.
Awesome.
And then he tells her that they're going to do this every day, and then he'll bite her where it counts and leave a scar and lick it every morning and night.
That's nice for them.
So they check in a bit, and she's like, I enjoyed it. But they're going to be tethered together for a little while, which is so awkward.
This is what I mean. So now they're tethered together for a half hour. Like, they're committing now to, like, at least 30 minutes every day. Well, more, because, like, foreplay, like...
having sex.
So what now, 45 at 2 minutes to an hour? That's how much they... Like, so much for a quickie.
For a quickie, yeah. You need to do, like, 40... Jesus
like,
Christ.
Quickies don't exist anymore?
No. It's awful.
It is awful.
And she asks if she should be doing anything else for him, but he says she's perfect, and, like, he just touches her clit again and makes her come. And she must fall asleep after, I guess. Beat out.
Yeah.
But she wakes up later, and he's just, like, rubbing her back and touching her and watching her, and she asks how long they were together, and that's when we get that it was 30 fucking minutes. Ugh. And he says she did so good, and she jokes that they're gonna have to schedule sex, because...
Yes.
Like you said, it's gonna take time. They can't just break apart, I guess. Like, I don't know. Can you just break apart? Would that just break her vagina? Ugh. I don't know. But anyway. She joked that they'll have to schedule it, and he's like, yes, we will. It's like, yeah. So she's just like, I need to, like, not be like this. Serena's probably gonna come looking for me. And she's like, I don't want to traumatize her with interspecies sex. But he's like, any relationship that Serena has is actually interspecies as well. And she's like, huh, I never really thought about that.
Oh, God.
So she says she needs to shower, but he's immediately like, no, because she smells like him right now. And after being apart, he's like, he needs to be close to her for days, maybe even weeks. It's like the typical mate thing. So she's like, well, you can shower with me and you can replace the scent. And I'm like, but I thought the point was Serena might come. So you're going to get stuck together for another half an hour and just be stuck there. Like, you can't even do anything.
And also, like, are they just going to stand in the shower for 30 minutes? Like,
right?
what are they going to, Like, are they gonna shuffle out? Like,
I know. I'm like, can you just sit on it and do your makeup while you're waiting? Like, what are you doing? Anyway, so it's awful.
Oh God. Yeah, this is just bad.
I get it. And I know I've read other books where nodding is a thing, but also it sounds fucking awful. Yeah. So she then asks him if he's gonna miss the wear experience, like, since she can't give it to him, like.
I mean, she gave it to him all right.
Right? But he says any idea of sex with a wear died when he met her. And she asks if it'll be weird that they can never, like, run together or walk in the sun or enjoy a meal together, which I kind of think are super valid questions. But he's just like, no. I'm like, okay, good. Good, we figured that out.
But, I guess that's the thing with having a mate that she doesn't understand, is that, like, you know, for him, they, like, she is it for him. It doesn't matter about all that stuff. And, like, he could never possibly conceive of doing any of those things because that's not her. So, like.
Yeah. It's just, I do think they're super valid worries. I'm glad that she's like, you said no, I believe you. Because you could easily just be like, okay. But she's just like, okay, then you can bite me. And he's like, no, there are actually, like, rituals and customs to, like, a mate bite. And he's like, I'm not doing that just right here in the shower. And he says that he's going to bite her on the back of her neck so that if her hair's up, it'll be seen. Very possessive, you know, of course. So then she offers to bite him, and obviously he loves it. And then they're in the shower, and he's going to mark her again. So he fingers her till she comes, and then he pushes inside her, and she keeps drinking his blood, and he knots almost immediately. And we're like, okay, this is the quickie. It's still going to be like 32 minutes.
Yes!
But she just keeps drinking and starts to feel the pleasure. So, like, they're going to come again. Yay. So we get an epilogue that is in Lowe's point of view. And the first part of it, he's like, she keeps making "you're condemned to a lifetime of misery" jokes, which I think is fucking hilarious. Yeah. But he's just like, he's not sure if he likes them. Because obviously he doesn't think it's misery, but I think they're so funny.
But, like, self-depreciating humor. So, like, it's sort of sad.
I get it. But I'm also like, it's a dad joke, and I love it so much. But he's just super happy that she's back. And we kind of get a moment of we're not really sure what they're doing, but she's like, to the left, and then to the right, and then then he's like, then she takes the hammer from me. And I'm like, oh, because it could have been sex.
And I would have been okay if it was.
Yes. But they're putting up some of his art. So he drew a Godzilla-sized sparkles over the Hollywood sign, but instead of Hollywood, it's spelled Liliana. So they're putting that up.
Cute.
It does sound super adorable. I wonder if there's fan art. He apparently doesn't think that it's great art, but he was inspired, and then Misery and Serena saw it and went out to buy a frame for it. And Misery is going to be staying in Lowe's room, so Anna has her room back. So they're putting it up in, I guess, Misery's old room. And he kind of thinks, like, when he thinks of the future, his heartbeat picks up, and Misery always notices, basically because she's a vampire in blood. But it's just kind of cute. And he thinks he never really thought he was lonely before, but he's not sure he deserves the life he has now. It's like, of course you're not. Misery turns around and hugs him and then spells on his, like, arm, and he only can get the L and the V and the Y, but he knows what it says. Obviously, love you or I love you or some part of that. And then she says the pest has arrived, and they go to meet Anna, and they haven't seen her, well, yeah, I guess he hasn't seen her in 2 weeks, and probably longer for Misery. And she barely hugs Lowe before she's obsessed with Misery and her new friend Serena. And then Cohen, who obviously was with Anna, walks in and just says, Emery is blowing up the group chat, among other things. Which is just like, he's so wild, because she, like, tried to blow up a school. Like, good, this is great. And then he walks in and stops immediately and stares at Serena, who is currently apologizing to Sparkles for leaving, which I appreciate. And then Cohen says, well, I'm fucked all right. And Lowe thinks, oh my god, this is going to be an issue. So Cohen realizes that Serena's his mate. Interesting. Is what we're assuming. A few questions about that. I actually, when I was rereading the book, I for some reason thought it was Cal. And that's why I was like, is Cohen a bad guy? We're getting a lot about him. But then I got to the end and was like, okay,
I just don't understand. Like, okay, the only sort of issue that I can see about this whole thing is the fact that he's celibate. Yeah. Like, other than that, why are you fucked? Like, what's the issue? And, like, if also, it is a genetic inherited role, does he not need to have children? Like,
well, we talked about this last time. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand the celibacy thing, but also your child gets your... Yeah. Like, so, what? How does his mother have a child?
You need to have a child before you become alpha in order for your line to continue.
Yeah. But I think it was also that, like, he... when Lowe was talking about it, he said that it was a choice. So, like, you don't have to be. It's just so that you're not... Your priority isn't somebody else. It's your pack. So I don't really know. But also, how old is he? Because, like, it seemed like he took Lowe under his wing.
He's old. Well...
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I would think he's probably 40. Like, that's the... No, that doesn't make sense. So maybe he's 50.
That's 25-year age difference. That's an age gap romance.
Yeah, there. But that's also, like, a nice, aware daddy romance.
It is, yeah. Like, and, like, he could have been, like, 20 and Lowe, maybe he's only, like, 5-10 years older than Lowe, but, like, he could be in his 40s, I guess, because Lowe is in his 30s and Misery is in her mid-20s. Yeah. Like, there's already an age gap there, and then we're adding at least another 5 years at the... Anyway, I'm excited to see what it's going to be like. It's funny, was it last week or the week before that we were talking about daddy romances? I think it was last week.
Possibly. I'm okay with it.
Funny. I'm sure it'll be good. I love her writing anyway. October. We'll find out in October.
Right. It's fine, but I don't understand. I don't see how they're going to make a whole book. You know what I mean? Like...
Well, I guess there's going to be, like, Serena and Anna... learning to do their thing. Yeah, and then maybe, like, Serena's gonna be like, no, I want to be a human. That'll be the third act break.
I guess.
Or maybe, like, he won't even tell her. Because it seems like, I don't know, obviously we've only seen it from a vampire point of view, but, like, well, no, because earlier he said that, Lowe said when his... Cohen's sister found her mate, she knew immediately. So is Serena gonna feel it but not know what it means? Or will she not feel it because she's half human? Like, what does... We already wrote a book in our heads here, so...
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, me neither. So yeah, that's Bride. Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I like the book. I do think there are some... issues, but I do like it, and I'm excited for the sequel.
Yeah, me too.
I don't understand the hate. It gets a lot of hate that I don't get.
Yeah, I honestly just think it's because people were like, she doesn't, like, they're just buying her books thinking it's going to be a contemporary romance, and it's not. I don't know. But that's what I assume the hate is from, but, like, I love it, but I just love her writing.
Yeah.
I'd read her grocery list. Like, it's just, it hooks me in, and I'm just like, I can finish this book in a day. And it's just nice to have that kind of read.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I guess we're done for this week. We're done
for this
month. We're done another book. And next week, we're going to be kicking off our third year.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fourth?
Yeah.
It's been 3 years. We have finished 3.
Yes.
We're starting
Kicking
our fourth year.
Fourth year, which is insane.
That was too hard to think of. But yes, it is insane.
So I guess we're going to wrap it up for this week. If you want to get in touch with us and share your thoughts on anything you heard in our episodes, or if you have any book suggestions for us, please reach out to us by email at coffeeandcoread@gmail.com, or on Instagram or Facebook at coffeeandcoread and coffee.coread on TikTok.
So next week, we're going to be reading a new book, and Kristen's really excited.
Kristen is very excited.
So we're going to be reading Quicksilver by Callie Hart. We're going to be doing chapters 1 to 11, so make sure to follow along, and if you're enjoying our chats, don't forget to follow, rate, and review wherever you get our content. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you on the next page.